That's a whole different story. My fault, y'all. How y'all doing today? Good to see y'all.
So Dr. Will and I had was having a conversation. I was sharing with him about some conversations I was having, and wanted to. Of course, you guys know how I do. I want to pick his brain because I believe that he kind of brings some things. He puts some things up front that really make us have to check ourselves daily as it pertains to our thoughts, our behaviors, our actions. And so, Slim is about, speaking life so people are walking in their authentic selves. And if you don't check your behaviors, your actions, your thoughts, you won't walk in your authentic self. So we were talking today, and I said to him that I he's taking my paper. I said to him that was having a conversation, and someone said to me, "How do you let go? How do you let go? Let go of challenges, issues, whatever. But how do you let go?" And then they said, "What happens when you trust yourself more than you trust God?" And I said, "Lord have mercy."
Lord have mercy.
I said, "Lord have mercy." And so Dr. Will and I, oh, okay. Dr. Will and I, was just kind of dialoguing, and he started right out the gate, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, I got to write."
I was already in the mood.
Right, I had to write this down.
I be at the live at 3 mode, live at 4. When we get to 5, my head's already there.
So, I know this is the one thing that I know. I know people don't know how to let go. And I know at times people are trusting themselves more than they're trusting God, which is the reason why they don't let go.
Okay.
And so how can we today? Because I don't want you guys just to walk away with our 3 takeaways that we normally give, but I want you to walk away with a plan and putting some stuff into action and really doing it. Not just talking about it, but really doing it.
Hey, folks. You gonna turn it up, so it's good.
Hey, Natasha.
Hey, Natasha. Hey, Keisha White. Hey, Elder Debbie.
Hey, Elder. How are you? So, how do we really let go?
Yeah, it's interesting. I gave some thought to it as we talked earlier, and then, had to walk away and then come back and hear it again, kind of kick me back to a similar thought. And part of that thought is that process is it made me think about pit bulls, dogs, right? So pit bull, the dog, their behavior, right, as an animal, they are instinctively processed to and genetically disposed to be able to latch on to something, right? So they're already predisposed to their greatest jaw strength being to latch on.
You go it,
right?
Well.
And I thought about the same thing with alligators,
Right.
right? Alligators and crocodiles, the strength of their jaws are in their bite and their ability to latch on and to hold on. And they don't have a lot of muscle strength around letting go, right? So they don't release well. And I was thinking about these gators and crocodiles and how they latch onto something and they don't let it go until they've taken it underwater. They've done what's called a death roll. So they spin around, right, to disorient their prey. Then they take it underwater, and when they find a place to wedge whatever their prey is in, right, that'll keep their prey from coming back afloat, they'll wedge it in there, and then they'll let it go. So it started making me think about how we grab hold and hold on to things, and it makes it difficult to let go because we haven't gone through the process of letting go. So it's important to kind of grasp that it's difficult for us to let things go when we have not effectively processed our emotions, the emotions that are involved in that thing that you're holding on to, right? And I say emotions specifically because it is our emotions that drive our behavior.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, people, some people may be arguing it, but it's our emotions that drive behavior. We've talked about kind of that process before of how to get from belief to behavior, right? Our belief informs our cognition or our thought then, and our belief informs our perspective informs our thoughts, and our thoughts inform our emotions inform our behavior, right? So when we have that, when you're hung up, when your action is, I can't let go, it tends that you're hung up in the behavior part of it because your informed behavior won't allow you to let go. Is that making sense? Is that making sense, guys? Then you'll find that the things that you hold on to, it's a great, easy way to test it. The things you hold on to that you're struggling to get rid of, that you want to let go, so that tells you it's not your cognition, it's not your intellect,
Right.
because you want to let go. So your brain is saying,
Let go.
let go. This ain't no good for you. Let it go, right? So it's not a cognitive issue.
Right.
But when you go back and really kind of search it, you'll find that there's still emotions attached to it,
Yeah.
And so the real question becomes not so much how do I let things go, as much as how do I process my emotions, when they affect me negatively, when they affect me in a way that may be damaging or painful for me. I think that's the real kind of question, is more of how do I process emotions?
How do we process?
I'm glad you asked that. It's a good question. So there's a lot of, there's several steps that go through processing emotion, right? And I don't know that this is a great forum to kind of, crash course it, because some of it is personalized.
Right.
So people will process emotions in different ways, right? So some of the ways that I process may not be the way that you process, may not be the way that you process. But we have to be able to understand the markers of how we process emotions effectively, so understand your personal marker,
Right.
right?
Let me ask you this question. Is there a starting point formula
Yes.
to help people? Hey, sweetie pie.
Hey, sweetie pie.
That's Sabrina.
Hey, Sabrina.
That's my sweetheart.
Oh,
Is
hey,
there
her sweetheart.
a starting point
Yes.
to helping someone just get to that point to start the process?
Yes. Yes. So one of the processes of effectively processing your emotions is understanding your emotions, right?
Okay.
So understanding your emotions and understanding, and some people will say, well, duh, right? I understand my emotions. That's not necessarily true. It may not be true, right? Because culturally, we process emotions in a very cultural fashion. Like, case in point, I know somebody, not y'all, but people, who is an exciting person, an excitable person, and across various emotions responds in a similar way, right? So all my life, my sister's been a hitter. Like, not hitter like fighting you hitter necessarily. I mean, she used to be that too. But not me. Like, I'm talking about with us. Like, quick to pop me, right? Yes?
Go ahead.
And you do that. You've done that when you're mad at me. You've done it if you've just been upset about something. You've done it if you're excited about something. You do it if you're happy about something, right? So I'm making that point to say a lot of us fall into the extreme of emotional response that we don't really identify the nuance of what we're feeling and truly identify the emotion, right? So Americans get angry quick. So much that anger is not necessarily an emotion all the time as much as it is a response.
Okay.
Okay? So a lot of times you may get mad and you have to go back and really identify what made you mad. And then in understanding what made you mad, you go back and say, I was really sad about it. And then I was angry because I was sad. Right? So you use anger as a way to respond to the fact that you were sad. You use anger as a way to respond to the fact that you're disappointed. You use anger as a way to respond to the fact that you're remorseful about something. Right? I'm mad that I did that. Right? So you feel remorse. But then you use anger to, so one of the things is we have to become a little more aware and a little more in tune with what actual emotions are and identifying our emotions.
Have we been, because I think you made mention to culture. Have we been, no, we have been trained to only feel or exhibit certain emotions. So when I am excited, since you used me, when I am excited, excitement doesn't mean, oh my God, you know what I mean?
Right.
But if I was never shown
Right.
how I ought to exhibit excitement,
Right.
really?
Yes. Absolutely. It's a trait. It's a behavioral trait that's there. I didn't whisper nothing bad. It just wasn't none of y'all business. But can you see that?
I can see that.
Yes. And so that's a good point, that culturally we pick up on things. And we can pick it up from society, we can pick it up from our family, we can pick it up from mom and dad, we can pick it up from school, right? And our peers. And it's important that we identify, though, when we're using a generalized response to our emotion as opposed to being in touch with how we actually feel.
All right, so let me go back to something, because I started talking about last week this relational reset, unlearning the habits or habits that hold us hostage to our emotional state, our past, whatever. So we're talking now about a behavior that we have to now unlearn.
Right. Yes.
And then reset ourselves.
Yes.
You know that when you're talking about unlearning something that you have done all of, because I don't.
All of your life.
So here's all right. So I'll talk about myself, since you done already threw me under the bus.
You know enough to talk about me. You just choose not to.
No, I don't, because I don't throw you under the bus.
There's no bus. I keep telling you, there's no bus. If there's a bus, it's the healing bus, and we all on it. Nobody's under it.
So when I am excited,
The devil's under the bus.
when I am excited, I am very animated.
Yes.
And I'm a hands-on kind of person.
Yes.
So I don't know any other way
Right.
to be,
Exactly.
because I've always been that way. So now I have to I'm 51 years old. I have to take all of this 51 years of when I'm excited,
Right.
yes!
Yes.
I gotta take all of that.
That's literally it too.
I know.
Yes.
I gotta take all of that
Right.
and not do it.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying, but you do take that. You don't know that you're alive.
I don't know.
But you do take that. And add to your pot.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You take that tool, you take that skill set, you take that behavior, and you add to it. You understand gain some new tools. You know, some new things that you can utilize, some new ways of doing things, and then you start to look at appropriateness. You know, when is it appropriate for me to respond to this person? You know, and then look at social markers. You know, I could be like that with my brother. Should I be like that with my banker? Right. Should I be like that at the funeral? So you know what I mean? Like, so you learn, and then you learn that, you know, when to use those different approaches and different scenarios and different, and you learn to understand true, like I go back to that true emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because a lot of times you have to ask yourself, am I masking my true emotions with this action that I'm showing?
Wow.
You know, am I masking my true, even in happiness, even in excitement, you know, to be able to identify this you can do on a personal basis. Identify that for yourself. You know, what are my true emotions? And then the way I act it out, and am I masking emotions and just responding? Right? Here's a new cultural phenomenon that I'm enjoying because it's so bizarrely a phenomenon. And I'm calling it the LOL phenomenon.
Okay.
That has people on social media and text messaging just firing off LOL. And I often am saying to myself, did you really just laugh out loud? Or are you masking either how you feel, or masking how you think the other person wants you to feel? You know, and so you're utilizing now LOL as an action to, you know what I mean? It doesn't really express anything. It doesn't really truly say how you feel or in that moment or, you know, at that time. You know, and I think that is indicative of what we're talking about. You know, that we just mask our emotions with our actions.
Wow.
It's the LOL
We
phenomenon.
mask our emotions with our
With our
actions.
actions.
I hope
And
this.
all this goes back to you know, that reality of really kind of understanding ourselves, understanding our emotions, understanding how we respond to those things, and being able to get a handle on it so that we can process our emotions and then be able to get to a place where we can let some things go.
So, second question is, what happens when you trust yourself more than you trust God?
Mm-hmm. What happens when?
What happens? What happens when we trust ourselves more than we trust God? First of all, I think probably those of us who've been in church for a very long time, we could probably say, you know, this
Mm-hmm.
happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we trust ourselves more than we trust God.
Mm-hmm.
But let's kind of flip this,
Mm-hmm.
right, and say, why am I trusting myself? Should I trust myself
Mm-hmm.
more than I trust God?
Interesting. I'll make point one. I'll make point two. Really point one.
Okay.
Right. So I'm gonna say takeaway one is gonna be trust yourself. I'll put a but there. Trust yourself, but know yourself.
Why do you think, I'm sorry, because I want you to finish with this.
Mhm.
Why do you think people make trusting myself wrong because the statement was, what happens when I trust myself more than I trust God? Why do we make it wrong to trust ourselves?
Because
or
we
why do
don't-
we make
yeah.
it parallel
Yeah.
with trusting God?
Yeah, I think because we don't know ourselves. You know, I think in that we can make it wrong, in that we are willing to transfer responsibility to God, so we don't have
Wow.
to be responsible for ourselves
Or our actions.
or our actions. Right? We'll transfer it to a deity, and I say to a deity, we'll transfer it to a spirit to, you know, get that weight off of us.
My God, Jesus.
So either God said it or the devil made me do it. Right?
Yes.
We hear that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We never hear, no, that was my decision. Oh, it went bad? Yeah, it went bad. It was really totally messed up, and that was my decision. and that's on me. Or we don't hear, oh, it went really well. Okay, yeah, I'm glad it worked out. That was my decision.
Mm.
We hear, oh, praise God. Don't think, no, it's not me. Well, I mean, this was all God. Or we hear the devil made me do it.
Right.
Right. And a lot of that is shifting that responsibility off ourselves because we don't really know ourselves and sometimes don't trust ourselves. And so that puts us in that conundrum of if I'm doing it myself,
Mm-hmm.
am I trusting me? But am I sure I'm going to make the right decisions? Right? And that becomes scary.
Right.
It becomes scary. You know, I'm thinking about the people who will sit there and say, hey guys, sorry, I'm late. Hey, Sister Vera. She says,
Hey,
sorry, I'm late.
Vera.
We was gonna lock you out. You know, it's interesting to sit back and hear the people who would say, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
Proverbs 3:5.
context that with lean not to your own understanding, right? Trust in the Lord with all your heart, right? So trust in the Lord with all your heart, right? So let your affection be towards God,
Mm-hmm.
right? Lean not to your own understanding is a statement of then come to understand God's way of doing things, right? And all your ways acknowledge Him, meaning then contour your actions toward the things that you just come to understand of God's way,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're good to go. But if you really process that scripture the way we just did, that still puts responsibility back in your
Yes.
hands.
Yes.
Because it becomes your responsibility to have an affection towards the things of God. Then it becomes your responsibility to come to understand His way of doing things. And then your responsibility to carry forth doing those things in a way that you come to understand it.
Right.
Right? So it still comes back to trusting that now you will do the thing. I just had a great conversation. It's funny that this kind of segues and hopefully it's relevant. I just had a great conversation the other day with somebody and I was saying that part of the failings of the ritualistic process of church and salvation, right, becomes
I love it.
the fact that we accept people into our into our church. I see what I did. We accept people into the church, and then we attempt to culturalize them into our religion, our religious experience, right?
I love
And
it.
the person argued, but aren't we supposed to teach them the way to live when they get saved? I said, so there is a theological term for that, right? It's called sanctification, right? And then my next question was, theologically, then who sanctifies?
Right.
Do you sanctify people?
Sabrina said, yes. I knew you would like this, baby.
So do you sanctify people? Or does God sanctify people? Because if God sanctifies people and you can't save people, then the hang up sometimes is we don't understand our role in the kingdom. Right? So we can't bear the responsibility for it.
Right.
And so then it becomes about, it goes back to who do you trust? Do you trust yourself to do things? Do you trust God to do things? Because I promise you, half the stuff you're trusting God, I promise you, I'm gonna say this right to your face. Half the stuff you trust in God to do, God is trusting you to do. Right?
We dropped the mic. I'm just.
If I had a mic. Drop the water. I'm glad that is open there. I've been apologizing to you for the next week.
Man.
Half the stuff you trust in God to do, I promise you, He trusting you to do. He had already said, I gave you power, I gave you authority,
Come on, Dr.
I
Will.
gave you dominion.
Come
You
on,
started
Dr.
off with
Will.
dominion. You had dominion anyway. You had dominion from the jump, from the
From the rip.
Had dominion from the rip. You know? You didn't have power and authority, came down, gave you power and authority. So now you got dominion, power, and authority to do the things. Right? And then I task you with doing greater work. And you turn around at every opportunity and say, Lord willing, Lord, I see you in church on Sunday. Lord willing, I'll be there. Lord willing, Lord willing, Lord wanting, Lord provided, Lord. You have to trust yourself to carry the mandate that's been given to you. You have to trust yourself to carry the book bag that God put on your back.
That's good.
Yeah, it's yours.
That's good.
It's yours.
That's good. Speak to this.
Yes. So this next takeaway revolves around again that cliche, the church isms that says, well, you know, when you're worried about, you know, you doing it your way or doing it God's way, you have to understand, you know, to cast all your cares on Him, for He cares for you. You know, lean not to your own understanding, all your ways acknowledge Him, and He'll direct your path. Right? That these are great biblical principles.
Right.
Right? And my takeaway, my second takeaway was to understand the difference between understand that principle is not process.
Come on here. Principle is not process.
Case in point. How does somebody get saved in the church? I don't know how many countless times I've heard in a particular denomination of the Christian church, someone come up to the altar for a moment of salvation because somebody opened some metaphoric doors. Everything is metaphor till you get to the front, right? It's amazing. Everything is metaphor up to the front, right? Bow your heads, close your eyes, right? Because now I want you to imagine this. I want you to picture this, and I want you to think about this, process this in your mind, right? Metaphor, if you were to die today. Metaphor, right? How did you see yourself in heaven, right? You know, come up to the front, open the doors of the church, metaphor for inviting people in, right? But then you get there, I don't know how many times I've heard people say, okay, you want to be saved? Okay, so repeat this. Giving them principle. And then they walk away from the altar unsaved. Because what you've given them is principle and not process. What they've latched onto is principle and not process. The process of being saved has nothing to do with the principle of repeating a scripture. There's a principle in the word that says, by no other name might men be saved. How many times have you heard people espouse that name as being Jesus? That Jesus, 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 by no other name shall men be saved. And there's somebody out there right now that might be listening and say, well, that's what it said in the Bible. But that's not what it said in the original text.
Come on, Dr. Will.
That ain't what it say.
Teach us.
That ain't what it say, right? And here's the point I'm making is we take process and we take principle and try and make it process. The principle of casting your cares on the Lord is not a process of learning to understand your emotions, be able to articulate them, be able to understand, be able to really rationalize them, and be able to take those concerns, right, and then know a God who cares for you personally,
right.
know how He feels with it, know that He's giving you these emotions, know that He's experienced these emotions, and be able to say in a relationship manner, you know, this is exactly how I feel, Lord. I understand you felt that way, so you can empathize with me, God, right? And now I'm going to trust you to have these emotions and to try and walk with me through the process of healing. If this was not His methodology to understand emotion and be able to put it in its proper place, He would have walked up to Martha and Mary when Lazarus was dead, right? He would have walked by him and said, hey, get over it.
O M to the G.
I'm about to do my thing.
Oh, God.
I'm about to do my thing. Get over it. He'd have walked up in our now vernacular, looked at Mary and said, really? Really, you crying? Oh Lord, had you been here? Really? You think this is about time, what time I show up? That's why Christ didn't respond that way, because he too has emotions, was able to properly put them in its place, was able to understand Mary and Martha's emotions in a time, be able to stop and have a moment to share that emotion, right?
Right.
And so in that understanding, you can see how it's possible, how the principle of casting your cares on him, for he cares for you, becomes the process of really understanding those emotions. And Mary's looking at Jesus like, even though you, Jesus, my brother is dead.
Right.
And I'm feeling that, Lord.
Right.
Right? And I'm feeling the abandonment that you and I got a relationship and I called you. And you out here serving and healing all these other thousands of people. But we got a relationship and I called you and I told you Lazarus, who you love, lay dying. And you sat where you was for another couple of days. I know how long it take to walk from there to here, Jesus.
Yes.
Right? So Jesus now showing up late to the party. My brother dead. You should have been here, right? So I'm a little angry about it because you should have in a spot moment, and I'm feeling a little conflicted because I know you, Jesus, right? And I can't really get in your face, even though we got enough relationship. And Pete, that she had enough relationship to say to the master, had you been here, my brother wouldn't be dead. Read into that text. Read between them lines what kind of relationship brings that out. That woman in ancient times,
Right.
in a
Right.
Judaic society, said in an open space to a man.
Then we just had a conversation earlier
Right.
about the wet.
Feel me?
Yes.
Read between them lines, right? But to my point, Mary's experienced all these emotions. She's grieving over her brother. She's angry because Jesus, who she trusts, didn't come when she expected him to. She's disappointed.
Right.
Right? All these things. Jesus takes this moment and stops. And it's like, yeah, you're right.
Did he do that?
He did. I know he was like, he
Right.
probably like, come here, wifey, let me hold you.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, my fault. I'm just saying. She all up on his feet with her hair and whatnot. That ain't strange activity.
Listen.
That ain't
That's
John.
a whole nother story for a whole nother day.
Who else was watching Jesus? Who else was watching Jesus' feet with her? Who else said, bump the dowry and the burial oils? This going to my man, my mellow right here, quite a nice fellow. Nobody else. Anyway.
We got.
So principle is not process. Learn the importance of the process of God's word. The process that's meant for you to go through. Right? And then you can understand what healing looks like, what forgiveness looks like. You know, there were times when Jesus just walked up and was like, boom, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But then there were a lot of times when Jesus walked up and said, you want to receive your sight? Okay, hold on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the original earth of which I made you. Right? I'm going to scoop that up. And I'm going to spit into it. Right? Because I need you to understand, I'm going to give a little of me into a little of this to help you. Right? I'm gonna rub it around and I'm gonna put it on you. I don't have to touch you. I ain't gotta lay my hands on you. I could have poof, bang, boom, right?
Right.
God said in the beginning, let there be light, and there was light, right? He didn't have to flip no switch. So Jesus could have just, you need to see? Go on, see. Right? That's how I'd have been healing people. Y'all lucky I wasn't Jesus.
You need to see.
Go on, see. Matter of fact, I'm kind of tired of getting late today. Everybody good. I already know what you came for, everybody good. Right? So he takes it, puts it on his eyes, and then tells him, listen, now once you, with it on your eyes, with your eyes closed, I need you to make your way down to the river.
Right.
I need you to wash your face. Right?
Right.
Then I want you to come back, holler at your boy. So here's my point, right? The principle there is, yes, Christ can heal. That's the principle. Christ can heal. It's powerful enough. God can heal your issues. That's the principle. But if you miss the fact that there's a process to it, that you need to show up, that you need to be ready to receive, that you need to be able to be ready to do the things that are required of you to do.
Your work.
Right, your work. That you have to be able to get the process that's involved with the principle. Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Dr. Keisha said.
So I always like to define words and things of that nature.
Define it.
So that when we talk about, because I did a whole year series on trusting the process. Sometimes we don't trust the process. And then
That's good. I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna speak to that, Sister Vera.
sometimes we don't trust the process. And the process is an involuntary series of change.
Mm-hmm.
It's involuntary. Just like we grow. You know what I mean? It's somebody don't come and turn you on and say, okay, you gotta grow to your 10 today. And then they turn it back off. No, it's involuntary. It happens. It happens. You know what I mean? And your principles are what's been proven. They're proven truths. And what's been proven? Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So your proven truth that you're gonna grow between the ages of 5 or 10 has no bearing on how tall you're gonna be.
Sure don't.
It sure don't. And here's the thing: there are
God
genetic underliers in us. Right? We have genetic predisposition to certain things, and it's possible that one sibling cannot be active and athletic and awakening those genes and go through growth and end up 5'10", while another sibling can come along and be athletic, awaken those genes, right? Work towards what they're genetically predisposed to and end up 6'4". Science. We're the same way spiritually and emotionally too.
Come on, Dr. Will.
Same way.
Please.
You are already spiritually predisposed to be giants. A lot of times we don't get there because we don't do the work. We don't awaken those spiritual genes in us to have that growth spurt that we could have. Now, I want to step back.
No, we're not from New York. We're right here in Philadelphia.
Hey, y'all.
Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's Janet from New York. Oh, no, Janet says she's from New York.
Oh, from the,
Is that Reverend
hey,
Mother Janet Williams?
Janet.
That's Reverend Mother. Hey, I love you. And I owe you a phone call that's coming. I want to go back to Sister Vera says she's trusting the process, but lately things have been happening that I'm not used to. Right? And that's awesome because you just spoke to that. Right? If you've never received the end result that you want, but in the process you're experiencing things you haven't experienced before, then that means that a different outcome should be on the way.
Yeah.
Right? So, because you should expect the same outcome when you're doing the same process. If all of a sudden there are new things happening in your process, there are new things that you're learning, new things you're going through, and experiences that are going to grow you, that are going to stretch you. So I hope that encourages you, Sister Vera.
I'm sorry, I wasn't even reading right.
All right, don't my sister crazy.
I'm not crazy.
Y'all.
I looked down.
From New York.
I know. I was just looking at, don't.
If that's the Reverend Mother Janet Williams I know, not just New York, but from the Bronx.
Hey. What was our takeaway
From
three?
the Boogie Down Bronx.
Did you give us a takeaway 3, Dr. Will?
Powerful sister in the ministry. Not yet. We haven't gotten to a takeaway 3.
Okay.
We working at it.
We working
We
at
climbing that ladder. Hey, Sister Mo.
So, Lord have mercy, I just missed my train of thought. I talked about process.
I got a good takeaway.
Talking about the trusting of the process. When we were talking earlier about trusting ourselves, you know what I mean? At some point, and again, I don't think we should make trusting ourselves and trusting God, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this parallel. You know what I mean? And then again, going back to what I said, if we do trust ourselves, oh, that's wrong. for trusting ourselves. No, I don't think it's wrong.
Right.
Exactly. It goes into all of the things that you just said.
Yeah.
What God has given us the power to do.
Right, right. And again, you lose a sense of self. You lose a sense of self if you don't attach who you are. Remember the first, did we do this takeaway?
We did this takeaway.
Yeah, trust yourself, but know yourself.
That was takeaway 1.
You cannot trust yourself if you don't know yourself and know who you are, know what you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time I had this conversation, I go back to a singular moment in scripture, ancient history, right? And it's a good principled story that's right around this whole theme. So the Philistines are out to war, right? And God's people are out to war. And so they're in battle. And there's this giant Philistine, right? Who's clearly one of the children of the fallen.
Mm-hmm.
We could have that conversation. Sister Vera, did you hear what I said? There's this Philistine who's clearly one of the children of the fallen, right? A begotten of an angel and human sexual activities and marriage, right? Because the Bible defines him as a giant, right? So here's this giant Goliath, this Philistine who is cursing not just God, but God's people, right? Cursing them, just talking trash to the nth degree, right? And here are a bunch of people who don't trust themselves to meet this challenge.
Wow.
One, they're looking at the size of the obstacle, and then they're intimidated by this huge obstacle that's trash talking them.
Right.
Just punking them. Like, go back and read the story. Goliath is straight punking the entire army, putting challenges up before him, right? Here, David shows up. This little dude, nondescript little dude, youngest, the run of the litter, not even in the army. His daddy didn't send him go check on your brothers,
right? See
if they need something. He shows up, but because of his awareness of self, of who, right, and self in a sense of who made him, whose side he's on, who he represents, who has his back. Because of David's true understanding and awareness of self, David becomes incensed and looking around like none of y'all gonna say nothing. He talking all this about somebody give me something. David was able to trust himself to go out on that field, this little dude, right? Sling off all the armor and stuff that you trying to give me your stuff. I got my stuff. I got to trust my own situation.
Yes.
Because at one point, I done killed the bear.
Yeah.
At one point, I done killed the lion. Let me just get a rock and a sling, because I can already trust that that's my thing.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
I'm going to go out here and do what I need to do. See, David was able to have that sense of trust in himself because he understood who himself was.
Right.
That his self was a representation of his God. Himself was the embodiment of God's people. That when he stepped on that field, he knew, he could trust that he stepped on that field with the embodiment of the power of his creator, the power of God, to be able to face the enemy of God. So there was no point of mistrusting yourself at that point, because he knew who he was. He knew what he had to do. So that's that real part of really knowing yourself. When you get into the spiritual aspect of this thing, knowing yourself is about understanding who made you. The manufacturer, we had that conversation. Yeah. Understand the manufacturer and the product. You know what I'm saying? I would take my truck through anything. I drive a 2004 GMC Yukon, and I'd have been in that truck when somebody has rear-ended me going at least 30 miles an hour with no brake. They didn't even hit the brake. There was no screech, no nothing. Just drove right up into the back of the truck. Boom! Destroyed their car, disintegrated front of them, and they were driving a minivan. It's literally like their the part of the front was just gone. Dust hit my truck. The back fender on the truck was a little bent. The truck was like,
Yes. Come on.
my son had an issue with a blowout coming off 95. Lost control of the truck. Truck went head on into a cement barrier. Bang! Rocked back. Drove it home, man. I get in that truck and roll, and I already trust
Right.
the ability of that truck to do what it's gonna do. That truck a tank. In the same way, I have a relationship with my Creator that allows me to know my relationship, to know who I am, and to move in that way.
So many people, and I'm gonna get off of it so you can do the takeaway thread. So many people in the body of Christ do not have that kind of trust.
A lot of it because they, again, don't really know who they are. I heard a wonderful sermon. I wish I could remember who preached it. I heard a wonderful message years ago, where the deliverer was saying, you have to understand you are king's kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You have to know what that looks like in a kingdom setting. You know, and it's difficult sometimes because, especially amongst minorities, right? And I'm always, I'll always work everything multi-level.
Right.
Because it's real, right? And it's really how it impacts us and allows us to function in our society and function well in our community. Minorities have not lived a kind of life where we have readily available to us that type of imagery.
Right.
What privilege looks like. We don't necessarily automatically, we can't automatically assert that into our lives.
Right.
What privilege looks like. What limitless resources look like. We can't really, put that into practice. What royalty really looks like.
Jesus.
We don't live in that type of society. So because of that, there's a lot of aspects of who we are that we don't naturally associate with.
Right.
Right. And we could talk about kingdom, but the truth is most of the people who talk kingdom are talking from a very abstract, a very non-relatable, way. Not that it's not, a real thing, but it's not necessarily something that minorities relate to easily.
Right.
Even though we talk the talk.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because if we do, like a crown prince, like a prince and princess, a real prince and princess, carries themselves a certain way,
Yes.
responds and reacts to things in a certain way, based on the fact that they are children of the king. So if somebody wrongs them, they don't have to respond with retribution
Right.
because they already know it's gonna be done.